What an amazing day out here. Welcome to Skip the Queue, the podcast for people working in and working with visitor attractions. I'm your host, Paul Marden. And today you join me for the last episode of the season here in a very sunny and very pleasant Bristol dockyard. I'm here to visit the SS Great Britain and one of their trustees, Sam Mullins, who until recently was the CEO of London Transport Museum. And I'm going to be talking to Sam about life after running a big family-friendly museum in the centre of London and what comes next. And I'm promising you it's not pipes and slippers for Sam. He's been very busy with the SS Great Britain and with other projects that we'll talk a little more about. But for now, I'm going to enjoy pootling across the harbour on boat number 5, awaiting arrival over at the SS Great Britain. Is there much to catch in the water here?
According to some research, there's about 36 different species
Oh, really?
of native fish. They catch a lot of bream, they catch roach, mullet, bass, carp.
Oh, wow.
Big carp in there, mate.
Yeah?
Huge carp in there. Then danger European grey eel is here as well.
Right, yeah.
Massive things, about the size of your leg, big heads, big eyes like that. It's amazing. It goes to show how resilient life is,
Yeah.
and the quality of the water is a lot better now.
Oh, yeah. It's better than it used to be years ago. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
All right, cheers.
Cheers.
Have a good day. See you later on. So, without further ado, let's head inside. So where should we head to first?
So we start with the stern of the ship, which is the kind of classic entrance view, you know, as you come in. I love the shape of this ship, as you'll see.
It's so lovely being able to come across the water on the boat and then have this as your welcome. It's quite
It's a great spot, isn't it?
really impactful, isn't it?
And of course, the amazing thing is that let's go in this way.
Yeah,
the
sure.
ship is actually in the dry dock, which was built to build it.
That's amazing.
So it came home. It was clearly meant to be, you know.
Quite the circular story.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Wow, look at that view.
So that's your classic view.
So she's in a dry dock, but there's a little bit of water in there just to give us an idea of what's going on.
Well, what's actually going on in here is preserving the world's first iron ship. So it became clear after he'd come back from the Falklands, 1970, came back to Bristol. It became clear that the material of the ship was rusting away. And if something wasn't done, there'd be nothing left, nothing left to show. So the innovative solution is based on a little bit of science. If you can reduce the relative humidity of the air around the cast iron hull of the ship to around about 20% relative humidity, corrosion stops.
Okay.
So rusting stops. It's in a dry dock. You glaze over the dock at kind of waterline, which as you just noticed, it gives it a really nice setting. It looks like it's floating.
Yeah.
It means that you can then control the air underneath. You dry it out, you dehumidify it. Big plant that dries out the air. You keep it at 20%, and you keep the ship intact.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you go to Mary Rose and you go into the ship hall and you've got this hermetically sealed environment that you can maintain all of these beautiful Tudor wooden pieces.
Yeah.
Well, we're outside on a baking hot day. You don't have the benefit of a hermetically sealed building, do you, to keep this
Well, I
thing
guess the outside of the ship is kind of sealed by the paint.
Yeah.
That stops the air getting to the bare metal. We can go down into the... Should we go down to the dry
Let's
dock?
do that. Whilst we're wandering, Sam,
Yeah.
why don't you introduce yourself? Tell listeners a little bit about your background. How have we ended up having this conversation today?
I'm Sam Mullins. I'm a historian. I decided early on that I wanted to be a historian that worked in museums and had an opportunity to kind of share my fascination with the past with museum visitors. So I worked in Much Wenlock in Shropshire, I created a new museum in Market Harbour, a community museum in Leicestershire.
That's interesting.
I was director of museums in St Albans, based on Great Roman Museum at Verulamium.
Okay.
And ended up at London Transport Museum in the 90s, and was director there for a long time.
Indeed. Oh, we are inside now and heading underground,
and
right?
You can hear the thrumming in the background is the dehumidification going on.
Wow.
So we're descending into the very dry dock.
So we're now under water level.
Yes.
And the view of the ceiling with the glass roof, which above looked like a lovely little pond, is just beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, it's good. It sets it off in both directions really nicely.
So you've transitioned now. You've moved on from the Transport Museum, and I thought that today's episode we could focus a little bit on what's life like when you've moved on from being the director of a big, famous, influential, family-friendly museum. What comes next? Is it pipe and slippers, or are there lots of things to do? And I think it's the latter, isn't it?
Yes. Well, I think people that retire either do nothing and play golf, or they build an interesting portfolio. I wanted to build something a bit more interesting. And Paul, there's that kind of strange feeling when you get to retire. And I was retiring from full-time executive work. You kind of feel at that point that you've just cracked the job, And at that point, someone gives you a card and says, "Thank you very much, done a lovely job." Kind of off you go. So, having the opportunity to deploy some of that long-term experience of running a successful museum in Covent Garden for other organisations was part of that process of transition.
Indeed.
I've been writing a book about which I'm sure we'll talk as well. That's been kind of full on this year. But I was a trustee here for a number of years before I retired. I think it's really good career development for people to serve on a board to see what it's like, the other side of the boardroom table.
I think we'll come back to that in a minute and talk a little bit about how the sausage is made.
Yeah.
We have to do some icebreaker questions because I've got to get you all ready. You're all ready to start talking, but I'm just gonna loosen you up a little bit. A couple of easy ones. You sat in front of the telly, comedy or drama?
It depends.
Probably that's not a valid answer.
Probably drama.
Oh, okay. If you need to talk to somebody, is it a phone call or is it a text message that you'll send?
Face to face.
Okay.
Much better.
Okay.
Always better.
Well done. You didn't accept the premise of the question there, did you? Lastly, if you're going to enter a room, would you prefer to have a personal theme tune played every time you enter the room, or would you like a personal mascot to arrive fully suited behind you in every location you go to?
I don't know what the second one means, so I go for the first.
You've not seen a football mascot on watching American football or baseball?
No, I try and avoid that. I like real sport. I like watching cricket.
Okay. They don't do that in cricket.
They don't, strangely.
So we are at the business end of the hull of the ship, aren't we? We're next to the propeller.
We're sitting under the stern.
Uh-huh.
We can still see that lovely gilded stern saying Great Britain, Bristol, and the windows and the coat of arms across the stern of the ship. Now this, of course, was the biggest ship in the world when built.
Yes.
So not only was it the first iron ship of any scale, but it was also third bigger than anything in the Royal Navy at the time.
They talked about that when we were on the Warrior at AIM the other day, that it was Brunel that was leading the way on what the pinnacle of engineering was like. It was not the Royal Navy who was convinced that it was sail that needed to lead.
Yeah, Brunel had seen a much smaller propeller-driven vessel tried out, which was being toured around the country. And so they were midway through the kind of design of this when they decided it wasn't going to be a paddle steamer,
right?
Which its predecessor, the world's first ocean liner, the Great Western, was a paddle steamer that took you to New York he decided that, and he announced to the board that he was going to make a ship that was driven by a propeller, which was the first. And this is actually a replica of his patent propeller design.
So this propeller is not the original to the ship?
No.
Okay.
Later in its career, it had the engines taken out, and it was just a sailing ship.
Oh, really?
It had a long and interesting career, and for the time it was going to New York and back, and the time it was going to Australia and back, carrying migrants, it was a hybrid usually. So
Right.
you used the sails when it was favourable. When there wasn't much wind or the wind was against you, you use the engines, use the steam engines.
Coming back into fashion again now, isn't it?
Yeah, hybrid. Yeah, yeah.
I can see holes in the hull. Was this evident when it was still in the Falklands?
Yeah, it came to notice in the 60s that this world's first. It was beached at Sparrow Cove in the Falkland Islands. It had lost its use as a wool warehouse, which it had been for 30 or 40 years, and a number of maritime historians, Ewan Corlett, who was the kind of key one, realised that this extraordinarily important piece of maritime heritage would maybe not last too many more winters at Sparrow Cove. It had a big crack down one side of the hull. It would have probably broken in half, and that would have made any kind of conservation, restoration pretty well impossible. As it was a pretty amazing trick to put it onto to put a barge underneath,
Oh, wow.
to raise it up out of the water and to tow it into Montevideo and then across the Atlantic, 7,000 miles or whatever it is.
It's amazing.
To Avonmouth. So it's a kind of heroic story from the kind of heroic age of industrial and maritime heritage, actually.
It resonates for me in terms of the Mary Rose, in that you've got a small group of very committed people that are looking to rescue this really valuable asset, and they find it and catch it just in time.
Absolutely. It was that was one of the kind of eye openers for me at Mary Rose last week, was just to look at the kind of sheer difficulty of doing conventional archaeology underwater, for years and years. Was it 50,000 dives were made on the site? Some immense number, and similarly here, lots of people kind of said, well, "Forget it, it's never going to happen."
Yeah.
But a few stuck to it, formed a group, fundraised. This is an era, of course, before lottery and all that jazz, when you had to fundraise from the public to do this, and they managed to raise the money to bring it home, which of course is only step one. You then got to conserve this enormous lump of metal. So, so it comes home to the dry dock in which it had been built, and that has a sort of fantastic symmetry, about it, which I just love. The dock happened to be vacant, in 1970 when the ship was taken off the pontoon at Avonmouth, just down the river, and was towed up the curving Avon River to this dock. It came beneath the Clifton Suspension Bridge, which of course was Brunel's design, but
Indeed.
it was never built in his time. So these amazing pictures of this hulk, in effect, coming up the river, towed by tugs, and brought into the dock here with thousands of people, surrounding, cheering on the sidelines, and a bit like Mary Rose, big coverage on the BBC.
Oh, this is the thing. So I have a very vivid memory of the Mary Rose being lifted, and that yellow of the scaffolding is just permanently etched in my brain, about sitting on the carpet in primary school when the TV was rolled out and it was the only TV in the whole of school. That to me is it's modern history happening. I'm a Somerset boy. I've been coming to Bristol all my life. I wasn't alive when Great Britain came back here. So to me, this feels like ancient history. It's always been in Bristol, because I have no memory of it returning home. It was always just a fixture. So when we were talking the other day and you mentioned it was brought back in the 70s, didn't realise that. Didn't realise that at all.
Yeah.
Shall we move on? Because I am glistening gently in the warmth
Let's move around this side of the... As you can see, the dry dock is not entirely dry.
No.
But nearly.
So, you're a trustee here at SS Great Britain.
Yep.
What does that mean? What do you do?
Well, the Board of Trustees, is responsible for the governance of the charity. We employ the executives, the paid team here. We work with them to develop the kind of strategy, financial plan to deliver that strategy, and we kind of hold them as executives to account to deliver on that.
It's been a period of change for you, hasn't it, just recently? You've got a new CEO coming to the first anniversary, or just past his first anniversary?
Yeah,
so it's been in place for a little while.
So in the last 2 years, we've recruited a new chairman, new chief executive, pretty much a whole new leadership team.
Right.
There's one more starting next month.
Right.
Actually, we're in July this month. So yeah, it's been, organisations are like that. They can be very, static for some time, and then, there's suddenly a kind of big turnover, and people move.
So we're walking through what is a curved part of the dry dock now. So this is becoming interesting underfoot, isn't it?
Yeah. This was built in 1839 by the Great Western Steamship Company to build a sister ship to the Great Western, which was their first vessel. Built for the Atlantic run to New York. As it happens, they were going to build a similar-sized vessel, but Brunel had other ideas, always pushing the edges one way or another as an engineer.
The keel is wood. Is it all wood, or is this some sort of...
No, this is just like it's sort of sacrificial.
Right.
So that, if it does run aground or whatever, you don't actually damage the iron keel.
Right. Okay. So, there's lots happening for the museum and the trust. You've just had a big injection of cash, haven't you, to do some interesting things. So there was a press release a couple of weeks ago about £1 million of investment. Did you go and find that down the back of the sofa? How do you generate that kind of investment in the charity?
Unusually, I think that the trust that's put the bulk of that money in came to us.
Oh, really?
I think they were looking to do something to mark their kind of to mark their wind up.
Right.
And so that was quite fortuitous, because as you know, at the moment, fundraising is difficult. It's tough.
That's the understatement of the year, isn't it?
And with a new team here and the new world post-COVID, less visitors, income harder to gain from pretty well, all sources. It's important to keep the site kind of fresh and interesting. The ship has been here since 1970. It's become, it's part of Bristol. Wherever you go in Bristol, Brunel is, kind of the brand. And yet many Bristolians, think they've seen all this and don't need to come back again. So keeping the site fresh, keeping the ideas moving on are really important. So we've got the Dockyard Museum just on the top there, and that's the object for fundraising at the moment, and that will open in July next year as an account of the building of the ship and its importance.
Indeed. That's interesting. Related to that, we know that trusts and grants, income, really tough to get. Everybody's fighting for a diminishing pot. Income from ACE or from government sources is also tough to find at the moment. We're living off of budgets that haven't changed for 10 years, if we're lucky. Yeah. For many people, finding a commercial route is the answer for their museum. And that was something that you did quite successfully, wasn't it, at the Transport Museum, was to bring commercial ideas without sacrificing the integrity of the museum.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Well,
the business of being an independent museum, LTM is to all intents and purposes, an independent museum.
Yes.
81% of its funding is self-generated.
Is it really?
Yeah.
So, I know I would have thought the grant that you would get from London Transport might have been bigger than that. I didn't realise that.
The grant used to be much bigger proportion, but it's got smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
And that's quite deliberate. You know, the more you can stand on your own 2 feet, the more you can actually decide which direction you're going to take those feet in. You know. So there's this whole raft of museums, which across the UK, which are independently governed, who get all but nothing from central government. They might do a lottery grant from once in a while. They might get some NPO funding from ACE, but it's a tiny part, of the whole. And this ship, SS Great Britain, is a classic, example of that. So what do you do in those circumstances? You look at your assets and you try and monetize them. That's what we did at London Transport Museum. So the museum moved to Covent Garden in 1980 because it was a far-sighted move. Michael Robbins, who was on the board at the time, recognised that they should take the museum from Syon Park, which is right on the west edge of London, into town where people were going to be, rather than trying to drag people out to the edge of London. So we've got that fantastic location, in effect a high street shop. So retail works really well, at Covent Garden.
I know. I'm a sucker for a bit of moquette design.
We all love it, which is just great. So the museum developed, a lot of expertise in creating products and merchandising it. We've looked at the relationship with Transport for London, and we monetised that by looking at TfL's supply chain and encouraging that supply chain to support the museum. So it is possible to get the TfL Commissioner to stand up at a corporate members' evening and say, you all do terribly well out of our contracts. We'd like you to support the museum as well, please. So the corporate membership scheme at the Transport Museum is bigger than any other UK museum by value, I think.
Is it really?
65 members.
Right.
So that was, that was important. Another way of looking at your assets, what you've got. Sometimes you're talking about monetising relationships. Sometimes it's about stuff,
assets.
And then we began to run a bit short of money in the kind of middle of the teens, and we did an experimental opening of the Aldwych disused tube station on the Strand. And we're amazed at the demand for tickets.
Really, it was that much of a surprise for you. And should we walk and talk?
We've been doing some guided tours there in a sort of slightly one-off kind of way for some time, and we started to kind of think, well, look, maybe should we carry on it?
Absolutely.
Maybe this notion of tours of disused stations, maybe there's something in this. And in a way, that's the third obvious example of looking at your assets. We've got the materials to work out what happened in these spaces underground.
You've got the audience that's interested,
and we've got the access through TfL. Which took a lot of work to convince them we weren't going to take loads of people underground and lose them. Or that they'd jump out on the Piccadilly line in the middle of the service or something. So Hidden London is the kind of another really nice way where the museum's looked at its kind of assets and has monetised. And I don't know what this year is, but I think there are now tours run at 10 different sites at different times. It's worth about £500,000 clear to the museum.
It's amazing, and they're such brilliant events. So they've now opened up for younger kids to go. So I took my daughter and one of her friends, and they were a little bit scared when the lights got turned off at one point, but we had a whale of a time going. And learning about the history of the tube during the war. It was such an interesting, accessible way to get them interested in stuff. It was brilliant.
No, it's a great programme, and it was doing well before COVID. We went into lockdown, and within 3 weeks, Chris Nix and the team had started to do kind of Zoom virtual tours. We all are, stuck at home looking at our screens. And those Hidden London hangouts were, the audience kind of gradually built. Yesterday TV followed with Secrets of London Underground, which did 4 series of. Hidden London book has sold 25,000 copies in hardback. Another one's come out next year, maybe.
And all of this is in service of the museum. So it's almost as if you're opening the museum up to the whole of London, aren't you? And making all of that space your museum where you can do things.
Yeah, and of course the great thing about Hidden London programme is that it's a bit like a theatre production. We would get access to a particular site for a month or 6 weeks. You'd sell the tickets, like mad for that venue, and then the run came to an end, and you have to, the caravan moves on, and we'd go to a different station. So, in a sense, often it's quite hard to get people to go to an attraction unless they've got visitors staying or whatever. But actually, if there's a time limit on it, you just kind of have to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody loves a little bit of scarcity, don't they?
Yeah. Should we go up on the deck?
That sounds like fun to me.
Work our way through.
So, Hidden London was one of the angles in order to make the museum more commercially sound. What are you taking from your time at LTM and bringing to the party here at the SS Great Britain?
Well, asking similar range of questions really about what assets do we have? Which of those can be monetised in support of the charity? I've got here, Paul. So we've got the same mix as lots of middle-sized museums here. There's a shop, paid admission, hospitality events in the evening, cafe. That mix. What museums then need to do is kind of go beyond that really, and look at their estate or their intellectual property, or the kind of experiences they can offer, and work out whether some of that is monetisable.
Right. And you mentioned before that Brunel is kind of... He's the mascot of Bristol almost. Everything in Bristol focuses on Brunel. Is there an opportunity for you to collaborate with other Brunel-themed sites, the Bridge, or...?
Yeah, well, I think probably the opportunity is to collaborate with other Bristol attractions.
Right.
Because Bristol needs to... Bristol's having a hard time since COVID. Numbers here are nowhere near what they were pre-COVID.
Okay.
So, and I think it's the same in the city, across the city. So, Andrew, Chief Executive, is talking to other people in the city about how we can share programs, share marketing, that kind of approach.
Making the docks a destination. You've got We the Curious, where I was this morning, having coffee with a friend and having a mooch around.
Yeah.
Talking about science and technology. There must be things that you can cross over. This feels like history, but it wasn't when it was built, was it? It was absolutely the cutting edge of science and technology.
Absolutely, and almost beyond. Brunel was pushing what could be done.
Yeah.
It is the biggest ship, and it's hard to think of it now because you and I can walk from one end to the other in no time. But it was the biggest ship in the world by some way when it was launched in 1845. So this was a bit like the Great Western Railway. Was cutting edge at the time. As we were talking about below, it had a propeller.
Yeah.
Radical stuff.
When we
it's
were
got
on
a bell too.
When we were on, was it Warrior that we were on last week at the AIM conference for the first?
Yes.
And Warrior had a propeller, but it was capable of being lifted because the Admiralty wasn't convinced of this newfangled propeller nonsense, and they thought sail was going to lead. Yeah,
well, this ship you could lift a propeller, because otherwise the propeller is a drag in the water if it's not turning over. So in its earlier configurations, it was that sort of a hybrid where you could lift the propeller out of the way,
right,
and set full sail.
Right. It's just it's very pleasant out here today, isn't it? Lovely breeze compared to what it's been like the last few days.
Deck has just been replaced over the winter.
Oh, has it really?
Yeah.
So have you got the original underneath? Or?
No, the original is long gone. So what we have replaced was the deck that was put on in the 70s when the ship came back from the Falklands.
Right. You were talking earlier on about the cafe being one of the assets. You've done quite a lot of work recently, haven't you, with the team at Elior to refurbish the cafe. What's the plan around that?
Yeah, we're doing a big reinvestment. you always need to keep the offer, fresh anyway. But it was time to reinvest. So the idea is to use that fantastic space on the edge of the dock. It's not very far down to where the floating harbour is really well populated with kind of restaurants and bars and offer. We're just that kind of 200 metres further along the dock. So perhaps to create an offer here that draws people up here, whether they visit the ship, or not. So it's it's monetising your assets. So one of the great assets is this fabulous location on the dock side.
Yes.
So with Elior, we're reinvesting in the restaurant. It's going to go in the autumn after some trial openings and things, Paul. It's going to have an evening offer as well as a daytime offer.
Nice.
And then it's being designed so the lights can go down in the evening. It becomes an evening place rather than the museum's all-day cafe.
Yes.
And the offer, obviously, in the evenings would similarly change. And I think our ambition is that you should choose this as the place to go out in the evening. Really, it's a great spot. It's a lovely warm evening. We're going to walk along the dockside. I've booked a table in the boardwalk, which is what we're calling it. And as you pay the bill, you notice that actually this is associated with the SS Great Britain. So the profit from tonight goes to help the charity rather than it's the museum cafe.
Yeah.
So that's the
pitch.
That's the pitch in which we're working with our catering partners, Elior, to deliver. Yeah.
Andrew, your CEO, and Claire from Elior have both kindly said that I can come back in a couple of months' time and have a conversation about the restaurant. And I think it would be rude to turn them down, wouldn't it?
I think you should test the menu really fully.
Yeah, I will do my best. It's a tough job that I have.
Oh, somebody has to do this work,
I know. Yeah. Talking of tough jobs, the other thing that I saw when I was looking at the website earlier on was press release talking about 6 O'Clock Gin as being a partnership that you're investigating, because every museum needs its own tipple, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And I think what people want when they go to an attraction is they also want something of the offer to be locally sourced.
Completely.
So 6 O'Clock Gin, Bristol beers. You can't always do it, but I think it's where you've got the opportunity. And Bristol's a bit of a foodie centre. There's quite a lot going on here in that respect. So, yes, of course, the museum ought to be doing that too. Yeah.
I was very kindly invited to Big Pit over in the Welsh Valleys about 8 or 12 weeks ago for the relaunch of their gift shop offering. And absolutely at the core of what they were trying to do was, because it's run by Museums Wales, they found that all of their gift shops were just a bland average of what you could get at any of the museums. None of them spoke of the individual place. So, if you went to Big Pit, the gift shop looked the same as if you were in the centre of Cardiff. Yeah. Whereas now when you go, you see things that are naturally of Big Pit and the surrounding areas. And I think that's so important to create a gift shop which has things that is affordable to everybody, but at the same time authentic and genuinely interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure that's right. And I'm sure it's the same for you as it is for me. When I go somewhere, you want to come away with something, don't you?
Yes.
You're a National Trust member and you haven't had to pay anything to get in, but you think, I should be supporting the cause. I want to go into that shop and then I want to buy some of the plants for my garden that I've just seen, on the estate outside, or I want to come away with 6 O'Clock Gin, or whatever it might be. And I think you're more likely to buy if it's something that has engaged you. It's part of that story that's engaged you while you're here. That's why everyone buys a guidebook and reads it afterwards.
Yeah. It's a reminder, isn't it, of the enjoyable time that you've had.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying myself up on the top deck, but
where should we go next?
Head downstairs?
The bow is a great view.
Oh, let's do that.
I think we might let's just work our way down through the...
Take a sniff. Could you travel with these smelly passengers? Oh, no, I don't think I want to smell what it's like to be a cow on board ship.
Fresh milk? Just mind yourself on these.
Indeed.
The companionways are very steep. Now, this is probably where I get completely lost, actually.
You know what we need? We need a very good volunteer, don't we? That will tell a volunteer's story.
Have you been in the kitchen?
Wow.
The galley.
Generous use of scent.
Lots of scent here.
Yeah.
Food laid out, pretty much based on what we know was consumed on the ship. One of the great things about the ship is people kept diaries. A lot of people kept diaries, and many have survived. So you know exactly what it was like to be in first class or in steerage down the back.
And so what was the ship used for?
Well, it was going to be an ocean liner from here to New York. And it was more like the Concorde of its day. It was essentially first class and second class passengers.
Right. Okay.
And then it founders on a bay in Northern Ireland. It's rescued, fitted out again, and then the opportunity comes to take people to Australia. The gold rush in the 1850s.
Okay.
Migration to Australia becomes the big kind of business opportunity for the ship's new owners.
Right.
So there's more people on board than it used to, and it plies to and fro to Australia a number of times, 30 odd, 40 times.
Right.
And it takes passengers, it takes goods. It does brings back gold because people were there for the gold rush. They were bringing their earnings, back with them. It also brings mail and other kind of cargoes. Wool was a big cargo from.
So people down and assets back up again.
People both directions.
Okay.
Actually. Yeah.
How long was it taking?
Well, a good trip, I think, did it in 50 odd days. Wow. Bit slower was 60 odd.
And the food was like this. So
in first
goose,
class it was.
Pig's head,
I think in
heads.
Steerage it was probably a bit more basic.
Yeah. Yes, I can imagine.
Now then, I think we might. Well, here's the engines. Let's do the engines while we're here.
Yes. So now we're in the engine room, and it's daylight lit actually.
It is got.
So you're not down in the darkest of depths, but the propeller shaft and all of the mechanism is the full length, full height of the ship.
Yeah, it runs aft from here back to the propeller that we're looking at.
Okay.
Down there, a guy's stoking the boilers, putting coal into the boilers 24/7 when the engines are running.
Yes, that's going to be a tough job, isn't it?
Yeah.
Coal is stored in particular locations, because that was something I learned from Warrior, was the importance of making sure that you had the coal taken in the correct places so that you didn't unbalance the ship.
I mean, you're right. I mean, loading the ship generally had to be done really carefully, so that it balanced out and so forth. Coal tends to be pretty low down for obvious reasons.
So let's talk a little bit about being a trustee. We're both trustees of charities. I was talking to somebody last week who been in the sector for a number of years, mid-career, interested in becoming a trustee as a career development opportunity. What's the point of being a trustee? What's the point of the trustees to the CEO, and what's the benefit to the trustees themselves?
Well, let's do that in order. For someone in the mid part of their career, presumably looking to assume some kind of leadership role at some point, they're going to be dealing with a board, aren't they?
Yes.
They might even be doing occasional reporting to a board at their current role, but they certainly will be if they want to be a chief executive. So getting some experience on the other side of the table to feel what it's like to be a trustee dealing with a chief executive, I think is immensely useful. I always recommended it to my gang at the Transport Museum, and they've all been on boards of one sort or another as part of their career development. For the chief executive, what's the benefit? Well, the board, very directly hold the chief executive to account.
Yes.
Are you doing what we asked you to do? But also, a wise chief executive recruits a board that's going to be helpful in some way or another. He's not just there to catch them out.
Yes.
It's there to bring their experience from business, from IT, from marketing, from other museums, into the business of running the place. So here we've got a range of trustees. We've recruited 5 or 6 in the last couple of years, quite deliberately. We know that a diverse board is a good board, and that's diverse in the sense not just of background, but of education, retired, still at work, young, old, male, female. You name it.
Diverse in all of the directions. Then.
Yeah. So a diverse board makes better decisions than one that just does groupthink all the time. It's a truism, isn't it?
Indeed.
I think we all understand that now. And then for the trustee, for me, particularly the last couple of years when the organisation's been through huge changes, it's been really interesting to deploy my prior experience, particularly in governance, because governance is what it all comes down to in an organisation. You do learn over the course of your career to deploy that on behalf. This is a great organisation. The story of Brunel and the ship, and his influence on the railways. I travelled down on the Great Western Railway today.
Yeah.
The influence of Brunel is enormous.
It's immense.
It's a fantastic story. It's inspiring. So, who wouldn't want to join? What in 2005 was the Museum of the Year?
Yes.
I think we'll just go back the way we came.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'd never find my way out of here.
Back through the kitchen.
Back through the kitchen. It looks like stew is on the menu tonight. You've seen the mobile, the rat.
And also the cat up on the shelf.
Yeah.
He's not paying a lot of attention to the rat.
Back on deck.
Oh, wonderful. So the other great endeavour that you've embarked on is writing a book. Tell us a little bit about the book.
Yeah, I've written a history of transport in London and its influence on London since 2000, since the elected mayoralty was started. I was very lucky when I was running the museum, where I had kind of 1 foot in TfL and 1 foot out.
Indeed.
I knew lots of people. I was there for a long time.
Yes.
So it was easy to interview about 70 of them.
Right. I guess you've built trust levels, haven't you? That mean that you don't look like a journalist walking in from the outside with an axe to grind.
And I'm not going to kind of screw them to the Evening Standard, tomorrow.
Yes. Yes.
So it's a book based on interviews, oral reminiscences. It's very much their story. So it's big chunks of their accounts of, the big events in London. So what was it like to be in the network control room on the 7th of July 2005 when the bombs went off? What was it like to be looking out for congestion charge the day it started?
Yep.
What was it like to kind of manage the Olympics?
So you're mentioning these things, and so I was 10 years at British Airways. I was an IT project manager, but as well I was a member of the emergency planning team. Yeah. So I got involved in the response to September the 11th. I got involved in some of the engagement around 7/7. They're seminal moments, and I can vividly remember myself being there at that time. But similarly, I can remember being there when we won the Olympics, and we were all sat in the staff canteen waiting to hear whether we'd won the Olympics, and the roar that erupted. There's so many of those things that have happened in the last 25 years where, you've got... It's recent history, but it's real interesting events that have occurred that you can tell stories of. Yeah.
So what I wanted to get in the book was a kind of sense of what it was like to be really at the heart of those stories. And there are people in TfL who made those big things happen.
Yes.
It's not a big, clumsy bureaucracy. It's a place where really innovative leadership was being exercised all the way through that 25 years.
Yes.
So it runs up to COVID. What was it like when COVID struck?
Indeed.
So the book's called Every Journey Matters, and it comes out in November.
Amazing. So we've left the insides of the ship, and we are now under... What's this part of the ship?
We're under the bow.
There we go.
And the bowsprit that's above our heads. So again, you've got this great hulking cast iron black hull, beautifully shaped at the bow. Look, the way it kind of tapers in and out. It's
a very three-dimensional, isn't it? The curve is in every direction.
Yeah, it's a great shape. So it's my sort of... I think it's my favourite spot. I like coming to look at this, because this is the business end of the ship.
What have we got running along the front here? These images in gold.
Well, this is a figurehead with Victoria's coat of arms, on Histoire qui Malipons, on the top with a lion and a unicorn.
Right. It's not a view that many people would have ever seen, but it is such an impressive view here looking up.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. And to stand here on the edge of the dry dock.
Dry dock's in to our right,
Yes.
and the floating harbour is out to our left. Yeah.
And much going on there.
It's busy today, isn't it? Yeah, it's good.
So we've done the full loop, haven't we? I mean, it has been a whistle-stop tour that you've taken me on, but I've loved every moment of this. We always ask our guests a difficult question. Well, for some it's a difficult question. A book recommendation, which, as we agreed over lunch, cannot be your own book, I don't think.
Yeah,
I think that's a little unfair.
Yeah. Or anything I've ever written before. Well, that makes it difficult.
Yeah, it's slightly self-serving, but yes.
Yeah, it would be, wouldn't it? Look, the first thing that comes to mind is I've actually been reading my way through Mick Herron's Slow Horses series.
Okay.
Which I'm a big fan of detective fiction.
Oh, okay.
I love Ian Rankin's Rebus.
Okay.
I read through Rebus, endlessly when I want something just to escape into. The Slough House series, Slow Horses, is really good. Okay. And the books all have a sort of similar kind of momentum to them. Something weird happens in the first few chapters, which seems very inconsequential, and then suddenly it turns into this kind of roller coaster, will they, won't they, ending, which is just great. So I recommend Mick Herron's series. That's been the best fiction I've read in a long time.
I think there's something nice, something comforting about reading a series of books where the way the book is structured is very similar. You can sit down and you know what's going to happen, but there's something interesting, and it's easy.
It's like putting on a pair of old slippers. You can. I'm comfortable with this. Just lead me along. That's what I want. I enjoy that immensely. Yeah.
And should we be inviting our listeners to the first book in the series, or do they need to start once he's got his found his way?
Well, some people will have seen the television adaptation already.
Well, that will have spoilt the book for them, won't it?
With Gary Oldman as Jackson Lamb, who's the lead character.
Okay.
But if you haven't, or you just like a damn good read, then start with the first one, which I think is called Slough House. They're all self-contained, but you can work your way through them.
Well, that sounds very good. So, listeners, if you'd like a copy of Sam's book recommendation, then head over to Blue Sky and repost the show notice and say, I want a copy of Sam's book. And the first one of you lovely listeners that does that will get a copy sent to you by Wenelin. Sam, this has been delightful. I hope listeners have enjoyed this as much as I have. This is our first time having a skip the queue in real life, where we've wandered around the attraction itself and hopefully narrated our way, bringing this amazing attraction to life. I've really enjoyed it. I can now say that as a West Country lad, I have actually been to the SS Great Britain. Last thing to say for listeners, we are currently midway through the Rubber Cheese annual survey of visitor attraction websites. If you look after an attraction website and you'd like to share some information about what you do, we are gathering all of that data together to produce a report that helps people to understand what good looks like for an attraction website. This is our 4th year. Listeners that are interested, head over to rubbercheese.com/survey, and you can find out a little bit more about the survey and some of the findings from the past and what we're looking for this year. Sam, thank you so very much.
I've enjoyed it too. It's always
wonderful.
good to rabbit on about what you do every day of the week, and being here and part of this really great organisation is a huge privilege.
Thanks for listening to Skip the Queue. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review. It really helps others to find us. Skip the Queue is brought to you by Rubber Cheese, a digital agency that builds remarkable systems and websites for attractions that helps them to increase their visitor numbers. You can find show notes and transcripts from this episode and more over on our website, skipthequeue.fm.